Hello and welcome. This is going to be a tutorial covering the basics of 3ds Max, the interface and the hotkeys and things like that. So if you review this, hopefully next time we have a class you won't be struggling so much. Okay, let's get started. Alright, first you see we have a fresh scene. Nothing special going on here. And let's go through some of these. These are well, don't worry about that. We're not going to use that. These are select and link and unlink selection. We haven't gotten to this stuff yet. We will. What this stuff is going to be allow us to do is to link one object to another. And let me give you an example. We're just going to drag out a couple boxes. Nothing special about these boxes. And we're going to move this one into position. Above the first one. And we're going to take this one and link it. You click once, drag, and release. And what this does is now once we rotate this, nothing happens here. We take this one and rotate it, and you can see the second box is linked, or the first box is linked to the second box. Okay, so as you can imagine, we're probably going to be using this when we're working with animation. For example, the length of your arm, the humerus bone connected to the what are those other two bones called? I don't know. Doesn't matter. This is an anatomy class. You get it. Okay. So, you understand what these are. And this is just unlink. It just unlinks one from the other. Okay. You can see now they're independent. So we have destroyed that link. Alright, delete, delete. Alright, next we have selection filter. Now we haven't gotten to use this yet either, but what this is where you can actually just select the things that you want to select. So for example, once we start doing animations, if you only want to select the bones in the scene, if you only want to select geometry or shapes, when we talk about shapes, we're talking about lines and circles, these things over here. We go to shapes, well, there we go. We got our splines, or we got NURBS, curves. If you only want to select those in your scene, you would use this and, use a marquee select. Next, we have select object. This is just your Q key. And if we keep hitting Q, you'll see this change. And one student was having a problem because it kept doing this when you're trying to select, and that's because your selection is changed. Now you can just hold down your left mouse button on this and you can change how you're selecting. Okay, the spray is very useful when we start talking about skinning, and this is your lasso tool. You're familiar with these from Photoshop. You should be. You should usually just keep it on the rectangular marquee, especially when you're learning. Select by name brings up a list and shows everything in the scene. Well, right now the scene is empty. So let's put a couple things here. We have a box, and let's have a sphere, and let's have a cylinder. And now when we go to select by name, this is everything in the scene, and we can just select something real quick. Now this is very useful whenever you have things that you can't reach very well, or things that so you won't have to span around the scene and try to find something. Okay, this is your selection menu as far as how do I want to select these things. Now let me give you an example of this. Let's get rid of these. and let's make some changes to this box. Okay, let's add some length segments. Let me add on so we can see the lines we're talking about, the polygons. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and convert this to an editable poly so we can adjust it. Let's make it full screen. Now, when we look at this and we switch to polygon mode, we want to select polygons. As you can see, whenever it's set to crossing, whatever you're crossing, it will select. When you switch it to the other mode, it only selects what's in the window. If you're crossing it, it doesn't matter. It has to be completely within the marquee rectangle. So it gives you a little bit of control with what you're selecting. You will find this useful at some point. Okay, select and move. This is just your move tool. And again, that's just the W key. If you want to just use the hotkey for that, you can just hit W. This is the rotate tool. Let's undo that. Rotate tool is the E key for the hotkey, and we know what the rotate tool does. And the select and uniform scale, well, that's the scale tool. We know what that does. Okay. And there are different modes for this. This one does it uniform. The second one does it uniform as well, but there's a slight difference. As you can see, this one does it at all different directions uniform. The second one, see the difference? And the third one, some people like this one. I don't really care for it. It's squash and stretch. Okay, and it only does it in a couple different directions. It's very strange. To me, it seems somewhat unpredictable. So I very rarely even mess with that. Okay? And those are the main tools we're going to be used for manipulation. The other ones we've covered. We've talked about snaps. We've talked about angle snap, percent snap toggle. We talked a little bit about that, and spinner snap toggle we haven't talked about, but it doesn't matter. We're not going to use it. All right. So, and let's go back over our basic sections over here. Okay. First one, the create panel. So when we say we're going to the create panel and we're going to create geometry, this is what we're talking about. You can go standard primitives, extended primitives, which we've seen that. The chamfer box was one. Compound objects, the only one we used here was a Boolean. We'll look at maybe a couple more of these as we go. Mostly we're going to be working with standard primitives and shapes. With shapes we have splines, which we haven't messed with a whole lot of splines, but we will. We worked with NURBS curves. We worked with the CV curve. So again, this is the create panel, polygon or the geometry section, and this is the shape section. Lights, cameras, helpers, we're going to work with helpers some, lights some, cameras maybe, space warps no, systems yes. And we'll get to all of these later, but remember that they are all in the create panel. This is the modify panel. So once we do create something and we want to change the settings of it, we go to the modify panel to do this. So once we've created a box, if you want to change the length segments, the width segments, or the height segments, perhaps you want to change the length or the width of the box, this is where you want to go. Now once we convert this to something we can actually move the sub-objects around, like an editable poly, this is where we need to go to mess with the sub-objects. This is also where we need to go to do some modifying tools such as extrude, bevel, bridge, inset, and outline. Flip, well, we might need to do that later if our normals get flipped, which we'll talk about that. I know it doesn't make sense now, but it will. Okay, some other things we're going to need from here: create, attach, cut, very, very important tool, which we will get to these. So remember that when I say we need to go to the modify panel, it's this. When I say, hey, we need to manipulate vertices, or vertices, I can't believe I said that. We need to go here and choose vertex. To the modify panel, choose vertex. If I say we need to bevel an edge, we need to go to modify and select edge. Okay, so this was a real quick run through of the interface and some simple tools. So make sure that you are quite knowledgeable about these, and you should definitely practice using them in the computer lab. Thanks for your time. I hope this was of some use to you.